Good afternoon, everyone. So I was attending last year's crowdsourcing week, and I thought, what a fantastic event. Yet I was missing one talk, and that was about the role of design within crowdsourcing. So thank you, AP, for inviting so that I could do the last talk of the conference. So we intuitively understand that a better designed product is also a more valuable one. And that is also evidenced by research. So prior research shows that following good design practices can have up to a 1 to 48 cost-benefit ratio, which means that for every €1 that you would invest in the design of your product, you can expect up to 48 euros in return, with a minimum of at least €2 in return. So, and with a growing space out there on crowdsourcing platforms, naturally the question is raised how design could help crowdsourcing. So I'm sure you have heard of Amazon and Google. Who has heard of Amazon Mechanical Turk? Okay, a few hands here. Who has heard of Google Consumer Surveys? Okay, again, very few hands. So we see, the big corporates are coming with more specialized products because obviously they already have the crowd, right? So it's just a matter of time of utilizing that crowd in different ways. So this increased number of companies and the increased specialized products by the big corporates obviously mean, at least for me, an increased role for design in crowdsourcing. So I would like to speak about 3 points that at least I see in the we see at the industrial design department in Eindhoven that design can have a role in crowdsourcing. So that would be design of new concepts, that is new novel platforms, design for evaluating existing platforms, and design for making a better user experience. So I think that we're only scratching the surface of the potential in crowdsourcing. So just to give you a couple of examples that come from the academic sector. So I'm going to give 2 examples that were published in ACM conferences that are, that's the Association for Computer Machinery, only last year. So both examples come from researchers at the US. So in this platform, which again was implemented only for research purposes, so you cannot find it online, but I'm sure we're going to see something like that in the near future. Now imagine you are a designer and you are now illustrating you have this illustration about a poster of a music event. Now, a common activity, a common necessity for designers is to get feedback and early feedback on their designs. So these researchers, what they did is, you see here on the right-hand side, they reviewed literature and they found guidelines of good design practices. And then they could essentially crowdsource the design feedback to anyone. So here, so if I was a crowd worker in this platform, I could go through all of the design dimensions, and I could even also place comments on the actual design. Now, the big deal about this platform is that the researchers actually then checked the feedback that they got from the crowd, that is from non-experts. They checked that feedback with experts. And they found that, well, the feedback that they got from non-experts is as good as the one of experts. So that's one of the first examples that we see that with the right tools, non-experts can provide equally valuable and meaningful feedback, at least for design purposes. The second one is also a very interesting one. Again, it was published by US researchers last year. And imagine the following. You have this great idea of an app or a website, right? But you have no coding skills at all. So what they did is, again, they implemented this platform. Maybe the graphics are a bit research-like, but imagine the following. You're starting on that top left screen, and you're starting to sketch the user interface. So you sketch something that looks like 3 buttons, and you sketch something that looks like a profile image. Now, what they did is on the back end, they had enough people with coding experience, and by just seeing your sketch, they would actually transform that sketch into an actual digital button, an HTML, for example, button, or an image tag for the profile image. So again, here we see an example where designing and implementation comes in the same platform, and we can see also a speeding up of ideas with these kinds of platforms. So the second point that I want to make is something that we're working in my group at the Industrial Design Department, is designing for evaluating existing platforms. So if you are a platform owner, naturally you want to ask, how good is my crowdsourcing platform? So with Simon, a student of mine who is just sitting here at the audience, we looked at existing literature on online communities. So actually there is a wealth of literature on how to build a successful online community there. And what we did is we looked at that literature and summarized it in 6 guidelines. The term that is used in academia is heuristics. So we have these heuristics, these design guidelines that you can take and then essentially check against your platform to see what is it that you are missing in order to build a successful community, and what would crowdsourcing obviously be without any successful community. So here you see the color coding of the 6 heuristics, which break down into sub-heuristics. And if you have then these guidelines, this checklist, if you like, then you can check existing platforms. So this is what we did, just to showcase how important, the salience, if you like, of these heuristics with 11 platforms out there. So just to give you one example, one heuristic is the platform's reputation. So does the platform speak out, essentially, show off the reputation? So you see some examples of 99 Designs, Samasource, and Design Together. So you see examples that they showcase the reputation. So we found by surveying across 11 platforms that existing crowdsourcing platforms do pretty well when it comes to this heuristic. But what we also found, another heuristic is whether there are tools in the platform for existing members to recruit new members. So does the platform support existing members, bring in new members in the platform? So again, by reviewing only a subset of obviously the hundreds of crowdsourcing platforms that are there, we found that for this heuristic, for this guideline, platforms could do better. Now, if you already have a crowdsourcing platform, we designed these physical cards where we believe it's an easier, fun way to evaluate your own platform. So if you're interested, just reach out. We could hand over to you such a set of cards. Now, the third point that I would like to make is designing for a better user experience. And I would like to qualify that into 2 studies that we're busy with in my group. So how do we, could we induce, with the first one is about empathy, and there the question is, could we induce through the user interface empathy from workers to requesters? And could we playify the user interface, and would that lead to a better user experience? On the same point, on the first point, on inducing empathy, I would like to just shortly present to you a study that it's ongoing in my group. So the first thing that you're going to see as a worker when you log in a crowdsourcing platform is the task description. Right? So there is these tasks out there, and you're asked to contribute. Now, these task descriptions look like this. So naturally, right? It's text that you read that text out in order to understand what is it that you want to do. So at my group, we asked, what if we change the medium? So what if, instead of reading out a text, you essentially see an animation that describes that text? Or even better, what if you would see the requester, a video of the requester actually speaking out the text? Would that make a difference? Would it, for example, affect empathy towards the requester? So this is preliminary data that we have, and the answer is in the video condition, we see that there is a statistical significant difference when it comes to inducing empathy towards the requester. And then the follow-up question would be, would it affect work quality? So again, we see in the video condition, by the way, I forgot to mention that the task that we gave to three groups of workers, which we recruited from Amazon Mechanical Turk, was we had 10 photos, and we asked three groups of Amazon Mechanical Turk workers, known as Turkers in literature, to caption those photos, right? So we showed 10 photos to crowd workers, and we asked them to caption them. In other words, to describe what they see in the photo in at least 50 words. So what we see in the video condition, although we asked the crowd workers to describe it in at least 50 words, we saw that on average for each image, they described those with 91 words, so way above our expectation, which again, it's statistically significant compared to the text condition. And when it comes to crowdsourcing, especially in microtasking platforms, crowd workers might experience that tasks are repetitive and therefore tedious, and they might find then in the end the user experience of the platform to be a boring one, right? So in our group, we're looking at ways in which we can playify such types of platforms. So in your left-hand side, we see you see that we're working currently with a company in order to essentially playify their interface, and by doing certain tasks in the platform, then you can have a different level of expertise, and it is for design purposes. Therefore, you see the word design there a lot. And instead, for example, in a platform, usually, again, you're asked to give feedback either as a worker to a requester or as a requester to a worker. And usually, in this case, it's with stars, right? So it's a star system. So we thought, what if you could have badges that you can drag and drop? And this could be, simple things, easy to implement. Nevertheless, it might make a quite a big difference when it comes to the user's experience in the platform. So these are just a few examples of the work that we do. So as a summary, I do see an important role of design when it comes to crowdsourcing in designing for new concepts and new novel platforms, designing for evaluating existing platforms, and designing for making a better user experience in crowdsourcing. And if you're interested, well, we co-authored with Simon and Epi a white paper, which you can find on the platform of Crowdsourcing Week's website, I should say. And there is also a recent chapter that we wrote on a Springer publication, which is titled Collaboration in Creative Design. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention.
There.
Do you get Do you get involved in mobile web design?
We haven't looked at that's a really interesting one. So it is emerging. So we do see examples also in academia when it comes to mobile crowdsourcing, but not as yet. Not as yet. So we would be interested in looking at the application of the heuristics, for example, that we developed, which is mainly for website crowdsourcing platforms, and how would they apply to mobile crowdsourcing platforms. But we haven't actively done something in that.
Thanks.
All right. And one.
Gentleman there.
Thanks. What do you think about user experience in this kind of designs? Because, it's very popular for the moment, but not really used, I think.
Well, as I said, if you look at the literature, researchers talk about a holistic approach and a reductionist approach. So the holistic approach, So there are two camps. I'm more of the camp of the reductionist approach, which says that you really need to specify what is it that you mean by user experience. That's why I talked about empathy and playfulness, which is something that you could quantify much easier. But I think there is a lot of work to be done, especially in crowdsourcing platforms, which are new, and business models are evolving. Platforms are evolving. So there is issues of motivation there. There is issues of user interface and user interaction. There is mobile, as was alluded to from the previous question. So there is still a lot of work to be done, but there is a wealth, again, of literature in user experience that could be looked at and applied in the crowdsourcing domain.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.